Hello, Mother. It's okay. It's the internet. They just want to see you. Mother's not ready yet. She says you have to watch the episode first. And then if you're good, you can see her later. After we show you how to shoot a miniature of our beautiful home.
Hello humans, this is Tommy at InCamera, and today we're going to be shooting a miniature of the Bates house from Hitchcock's classic horror, Psycho. Now, if you saw our previous episode on shooting with fiber-filled clouds, you'll know that we came away with some really lovely storm cloud plates, complete with lightning flashes. So we thought it'd be really fun to try and recreate the establishing shot from Psycho 2 using a miniature of the house and one of our storm cloud plates. Really to just demonstrate how you can create these kind of wide establishing shots using miniatures and therefore saving the cost of location fees, set builds and big crews. Now we're not just gonna recreate the shot by getting the right angle on a blue screen, lighting it and shooting it. We've also got a few cheeky tricks up our sleeves that we hope are really going to help sell it. Miniatures! So when you're shooting miniatures, what's the most important thing to get right? Well, the miniature, obviously. There are some really incredible examples of miniature work in movies that not only stand up today, they still sing. If you really want to sell a miniature as real, you've got to get into the details, and getting a model of good size and scale is really your starting point. That's why when Weta came to build the miniature sets for The Lord of the Rings, they recognized that with modern glass as sharp and unforgiving as it is, that to really stand up to scrutiny, miniatures weren't enough. They needed bigatures. So they increased their build scale as much as they could and made some real beasts. The bigger the model, the more detail you can apply. And it's all those details that are going to really sell that sense of scale and realism. Weta, we salute you. So having said that, we don't have a feature film budget for what we're doing today. We're just trying to demonstrate what's possible. So JP's picked up a scale model that's really about as small as you dare work with to get a shot like this. But we figured this would be a great way to show you how you can achieve a shot like this with a model that's not so big and expensive that you can't afford it, something that you could shoot in your own home. So Japes, just tell us how you went about weathering and trying to add as much detail as you could into what is a relatively small model.
Yeah, well, I mean, the model itself is a kit, and it's quite readily available online from your nearest and biggest online auction sites. And it's a very easy kit to put together. It comes flat pack and, you know, it's very cheap.
Is this like CNC'd wood or something like that?
It's laser cut wood, yeah, 3mm plywood.
Okay.
And very easy to put together. Yeah, and it's great, but it kind of didn't have that much detail to the surface, so to increase the surface detail that hopefully will sell the scale as being bigger, I literally just clad the surface of the model with some coffee strainers, which are effectively wooden sticks.
Yeah. I assumed it was lollipop sticks, but they're narrower.
They're narrower.
Coffee stirrers.
And they
nice.
By chance, they kind of work within the scale that we're after, so they work quite nicely as planks. As for weathering and the paint, quite a quick job on it, but it's basically trying to match the weathered look from Psycho 2 when the house itself was left open to the elements and not looked after, so it's quite
sort of decrepit.
Yeah, dilapidated. And so that was a simple case of doing a load of washes, different colours, and fading them with a white wash, getting in there with the scalpel and scraping off back to the bare wood underneath. Yeah, lots of little tricks just to give it a weathered and aged look, really.
Mm. You dress to camera, right? There's no need putting all the detail on the back end that we're never going to see. But what's nice about that is that we can see the difference between what JP had to start with and what he's created, which is so great. That's great, man. Really great. We use an apple box and a table to achieve a low angle frame for our shot. Partly because in the movie, the house sits on top of a hill, but also because that low angle makes the house look bigger and more imposing. We've sat it on black drape to cancel any light bounce, as this is a night shot and we want complete control over the lighting. We place sandbags around the legs to make sure our table is as sturdy as possible. When you're shooting multiple passes, the last thing you want is for your miniature to get knocked and moved during the shot. So we also place sandbags around the base. You can even screw your miniature down onto the base if you plan on shooting over a long period of time. So we're going for blue screen instead of green screen, simply because we've got some little trees that we're going to put in our foreground that JP's putting together, and we just don't want to lose any of that detail when we key our background out. So we're just lighting our blue screen with a couple of Kinoflos here, but I mean, you could just as easily use a few LED panels or whatever, just as long as you're getting a relatively consistent light fall on the screen. You could mount it from above, but obviously that's quite a lot of effort. You know, stand from each side, firing in from each side, and we should get a fairly even distribution of light. And while these aren't technically dimmable, we still have a lot of flexibility in terms of output, because we've got 4 tubes in here. Each one can be turned off or on independently, and then you've also got this kind of 2-foot, 4-foot option, which basically is full power or half power. So we should have enough flexibility to light our screen as we need it, depending on how our camera is set. And obviously what we need to make sure as well is that we're not getting any bounce or spill onto our model. So we just need to make sure that it's far enough away, so that it's out of focus, so we're not getting any detail on the background, but also so that it's not bouncing blue light onto our model. Woo! It's coming off. Yeah. Nice.
So we're going to dress in some miniature trees, and we're going to be using this, which is called Seafoam, which is a really nice miniature representation of tree and leaves. I'm just adding a bit of height to this one, giving it a bit of a trunk, so we've got some height that will offer up nicely at the side of our house.
JP adds a few twigs and stones to the surrounding area and then fixes the trees with blue tack. Remember, it's all about what the camera sees. He regularly checks how these different pieces look and even applies a few last paint touch-ups. Right, let's light that house. As this is a locked off shot and we have total control over the lighting, we thought this would be a great opportunity to demonstrate how you can light a miniature shot like this in what we call passes. Now, the best way to approach lighting any scene, big or small, is to consider the tone, not just of the film, but of the scene. So where does this shot come in the film, and what's it supposed to make us think and feel? Now, we know that this is a wide establisher of the house at the beginning of the film, and we know that the sky above is heavy and thunderous, and that's giving us a clear indication that this is not a happy moment, or indeed a happy house. And as we all know, lots of bad things have happened here. And when the audience sees this shot, we want them to feel a sense of tension, apprehension, even fear. And so we really want to bear all of those elements in mind when we're lighting our shot. So when you light a scene, it's important to consider what the motivations are for your light sources. Now, in this scene, there are no lights outside the house to speak of. There are no street lamps, there's no porch light or anything going on here. And so really the only light that we would have in real life is that coming from the sky. But we know that the sky is full of thick, heavy clouds, so actually very little sunlight is going to be getting through either. And so what we're going to have to go for is a very subtle, soft source. So I'm going to start with a bounced source, which I'm setting up above the house to recreate the low, soft light effect of a cloudy evening. We can also add a gel or tweak the white balance to just cool off those colors a little bit as dusk starts to set in. I position the bounce source above and slightly behind the house, effectively putting much of the house into silhouette and creating some really nice, mysterious shadows that not only looks great, but also gives us that slight sense of something spooky or supernatural. I'm going to bring this little bounce up here and offer that up. And there you go, you see. You don't have to add a light to get more of that light in there. You literally just bounce some of that light back in, and that way you're not getting any direction from the light. It's just filling in and just allowing us to see some of that nice detail in there. So when you want your light to be super subtle, bounce it. Right, let's put that on a stand. So I'm just playing a little bit with the distance that my bounce is at. I don't want the area that I'm filling to be too bright, and I certainly don't want it to be as bright as the source that we've got coming from the sky. So I'm just kind of moving it back and forth to find a nice middle ground where we're lifting those dark shadows up, but it doesn't look lit. Shadows are great, but you still want enough light on it so that you can still see the detail. And then you can always just bring it right down in post if you do find you want to go for that really high contrast, light and dark look.
Mother's asking if you would all kindly like this video and subscribe to the channel. She says it'll be good for business. The motel's been quiet recently.
So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to shoot this in multiple passes so that we've got lots of flexibility in post. So we repeat the same shot with different light setups so we can play with the luminance and colour of each source in post. So for our first pass, we shoot the house with our bounced key light and fill. Next, we shut off the key and shoot the house in silhouette with just the blue screen lit. Right, time for our first trick. So we know that our background sky plate has lightning flashes in it. In reality, that will be lighting up the house as they flash. So we need to make sure that we've got flashes of light hitting our house at the exact same time and angle as our plate shot. So what's the answer? Use the plate as the source. Well, sort of. This is called a MegaBoom. I like that it's called a MegaBoom. We're using our fairly bog standard 1080p projector. The mount on this is actually for a speaker stand, which is not compatible with anything in the film industry, audio versus film. So it's okay because I've got spigots and I've got clamps. With a spigot and a K-clamp, you can mount most things to most things. And then when you're hanging anything from anywhere at any kind of height, always use safety cables to make sure that if your clamp fails or something falls off, it will be caught and not fall on someone's soft head. And the joyous thing about this boom is that I can now pretty much get any angle I want with this array of cranks here. So I'm bringing her up on this one, let's say to there, and then see if I can remember which one it is. Yep, and then I can turn that one round. We want the flashes to be hard and bright, so we need direct light from the projector, but we don't want to project the image of clouds onto our house. We just want the lightning flashes. So JP's created a black clip with white flashes based on the exact timing of the cloud plate. JP's added a couple of red flashes at the beginning of the plate in order to perfectly sync them with the cloud plate, kind of like a digital clapperboard. As we've got much of the house silhouetted, this is also a nice opportunity to find a good projection angle so that those flashes momentarily light up the dark areas.
Because we'll be using a video projector for our interactive flashes, it's wise to check on camera your shutter speed isn't misfiring with the refresh rate of your projector. In a worst case scenario, this can create banding and strobing to your light or image that you're projecting. So what we're going to do first is go through some shutter speeds and double check we're not getting any strobing or flicker.
Yeah. We then move our projector to various positions to mimic the direction of each lightning burst. Now there is one other motivated light source in this scene, but it's not outside the house, it's inside. Mother's room. We all know that famous silhouette of Mother in the window, always watching Norman. So we've got to put that in. And in order to make this feel as real as possible, we want her to be moving, not just a backlit silhouette, which, let's be honest, could just be a cutout in the window. Instead, we're going to shoot Mother on a green screen and build a blackout box around her to block the surrounding light and create a nice strong silhouette. We'll then just need to key out the green and composite that silhouette into the window frame. And again, it's just another detail to add to our setup to bring life to an otherwise inanimate object. But if we just left it at that, there would be something missing. If this were a real house and there was a light on in that room, the light would spill onto the window ledge and the surrounding area. If we simply comped our silhouette shot into the window of the model, there would be no light spill on the surrounding frame. And sometimes when you see a shot that's missing something as subtle as this, you might think there's something about it that feels fake, though you might not necessarily be able to put your finger on why. By considering all these types of little details, You're basically taking away reasons for your audience to think that this is a trick. And then we set up a board to catch the reflections in all the windows and project our actual cloud plate onto the board. This way, we'll actually see the clouds flashing in the window's reflection. Next up, we want to give some life to our trees. They're not the kind of trees that we can really put a fan on and start blowing around. Also, we'd have to shoot them separately. So what we've decided to do is shoot some leaves on our blue screen as elements, which we can then stick into the trees just to give them a little bit of movement. Okay, so it turns out that was a bad idea. Way too many elements to work with for a relatively small detail. So instead, JP shot a tree in his garden, did a luma key, and cropped it to fit our trees. And a cheeky little extra one for a bit of foreground action. And now for our last trick. Using the green screen setup, we shoot Norman walking up a couple of steps and pausing to look up at the house and that foreboding sky. By adding this element to the extreme foreground, we're adding more life to the shot whilst creating a greater sense of depth to the composition. So quite a lot for JP to work with there. Join us for part 2, where we're going to show you how to composite all of those passes into one single shot that's going to bring this little guy to life. See you then. Oh, okay, here's the final comp anyway. You earned it. But watch out for part 2. It's going to be a banger. Lights up.